Relationships.
Okay, everybody. Welcome to episode 12 of Relationships.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm Paul.
I'm Bryce.
I'm Shayla.
Shayla's back.
She's
Hi, guys.
back.
I'm here again.
Because Shayla's an expert censor.
Yes.
You guys, I feel so expert at everything when I come here. It's great.
You're an expert woman.
Well, you've paid the price to get there.
Yeah, you
You
have.
deserve
been a
all the
lot of work.
accolades.
Yeah, you do. So last time, to a little bit of recap, last time we talked about introversion. So we've been talking about the Myers-Briggs type indicator or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And last time we talked about the first letter of 4, the first of which is extroversion versus introversion, E versus I. So, anyways, if you want to learn about that, go back to that episode.
That's right. Stop this right now.
And then give us 5 stars and
And share with all your best friends.
Yeah.
and we are on Apple Podcasts. We're on Google Podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a new one. We're on Stitcher, SoundCloud.
Wait, are we on SoundCloud? We're not on SoundCloud anymore.
Well, if you go and
we
search
show up
for
there?
us, you can download. I'm pretty sure. Well, that's a good.
They used to host us.
I don't know.
And we
I might
realized
have
they
just
were.
lied, but
No, I'm not going to say anything about them. They were great.
yeah.
They're wonderful. They just weren't for us.
Thumbs up, SoundCloud.
Don't
But-
hurt us.
We're on Podbean. Anyways, which Bryce always can't remember whether it's Podbean or BeanPod, but it's Podbean.
I can now. See, I've
Yeah,
grown.
now you can.
I've
Okay,
really grown.
excellent.
Good job.
But you're
Awesome.
right. At first, there was some
man.
confusion.
That's just one of many ways in which you're like a plant.
Yeah. Well, last time we also learned about how Paul is like a plant, how he got over his seasonal affective disorder
Oh, that's true.
by getting sunlight.
He opens
a
up
good
in the
point.
sunshine.
Yeah.
It's
That's a
great.
good point. I also kind of like plants. I've gotten into plants lately.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I bought some seeds the other day. We had like a plant here that I had overwatered, and it was breeding like all these teeny little gnats all over the place.
Oh.
Ugh.
And while they were flying around, Bryce did the proactive thing of putting some like vinegar in a
Oh,
bottle or something.
oh,
and
yeah.
started killing them.
wait. No, those fruit flies came from elsewhere.
Oh, they're from somewhere. Oh, those
Oh,
fruit
yeah.
flies
That
were
was not
from,
your fault.
Okay, good. So what, did they come from somebody's bananas or in the garbage? or
It's
something?
someone's fruit in the
Okay.
garbage somewhere. Yeah, I think downstairs.
So
Anyway.
so while Bryce did the very quick solution, I went online and I bought some seeds for a carnivorous plant. And so apparently now you can buy like straight up like adult Venus flytraps online, and I used to have one when I was a child, which was really cool. But they're more expensive, and I was like, I want to grow something from scratch. And so anyways, apparently it's very hard to grow Venus flytraps or those pitcher plants from seeds. But the other kinds that have like kind of like they got all these stems with like sticky stuff on the ends
Oh,
that
yeah.
like traps the plants. Those ones are apparently easier to
Yeah.
grow from. So I ordered them. Supposedly they're coming from China, but maybe they haven't made it past the tariffs.
Yeah.
I haven't got them.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah. That's a big part of the president's economic agenda is to.
Yeah. Carnivorous plants.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's ruining America.
that's right. That's right. So I don't know, but Bryce had a plant that was dying, by the way, and he put it outside to try to get it more sunlight and stuff. And then I asked him one day, Bryce, do you want to check this plant into the Paul Plant Hospital? And he was like, yeah, okay. And I took it in the bathroom. I shouldn't take any credit for this really because I think the plant was doing its own work by itself. But I just
You helped.
I put it in the bathroom and watered it, and then it started like growing like gangbusters.
Wait,
Yeah.
you watered
And
it?
yeah, exactly.
Imagine that.
That is literally the thing I had been neglecting.
I'm sure these plants. I think these plants in the bathroom. They probably also enjoy that it's just more humid in there.
Humid.
Sometimes
That's true.
Too,
Yeah.
but,
That's true.
because the shower.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyways, and then Bryce asked me the other day. He's like, "Paul, are you feeding this thing human growth hormone?" And I said, "I'm feeding it plant growth hormone, which is called love."
Which is also human growth hormone.
Whoa.
Yo,
Amazing.
awesome. That's what I'm talking about. Okay,
So,
well,
there's also another plant that Paul's magic has not worked on.
yeah, that's
But
true.
that's because it was like totally dead already.
That's true. I was like, man, this thing is like Lazarus, man. I can't work a miracle.
Yeah.
Bring me something that's still
This
breathing.
thing is not mostly dead. It is dead.
Yeah, at any rate. Well, so this episode, we're talking about the second letter of Myers-Briggs, which is S versus N, which is interesting because you would think it's S versus I because it's sensing versus intuition, but they had already used up the
That's
I for
right.
introversion. So it's the N of intuition. some people will also say this as sensors versus intuitors. So okay, I got to ask you a couple
and
questions.
this is the letter about one of the two main functions, which is getting information, right? And just to recap, the other one is making decisions. So those are the middle two letters. The last of the four letters is about which of those functions is dominant for us. Do we prefer making decisions or getting information? Sorry, go on.
Okay. And I think
There's Bryce's pedantic interruption, of which I have at least one every episode.
Awesome.
Usually more, probably.
All right, as many as you need, man.
Thank you.
As many as you need. At any rate, I'm just gonna this paragraph here. I think like this information we got here is again from personality pages, and I feel like this does a little bit of clarifying for me because I've always thought to myself, well, it says we say the SN preference refers to how we gather information, but I was talking with a friend this week and we were feeling a little bit confused about that because we were thinking like, is it really how we gather information or is it what we do with the information once it's gathered? And anyways, this says we all need data on which to base our decisions. We gather data through our five senses. Carl Jung contended that there are two distinct ways of perceiving the data that we gather. The sensing preference absorbs data in a literal, concrete fashion. The intuitive preference generates abstract possibilities from information that is gathered. So that clarifies a little bit for me. It's not like these perceivers it's not like the intuitors are gathering data necessarily without their five senses. It's that they gather data and then they intuit things from the data that they gather instead of just taking it all in concretely. Basically.
Yeah, because it also says that we all use both sensing and intuition in our lives, but to different degrees of effectiveness and with different levels of comfort.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. So,
because again, Myers-Briggs is a theory about, or a framework about preferences, because no one has the opportunity to be exactly how they prefer all the time.
Sure.
And they probably shouldn't.
Yeah. I will say that I think we talked about this in one of the earlier episodes, maybe in the first Myers-Briggs episode, but I think N's tend to be a little bit more into personality typing in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's kind of more of an intuiting kind of thing. You're taking some information and then you're extrapolating. But anyways, and I want to point out that before we started this episode, Shayla said that she thought she had tested as an N, and I said, actually, I would guess you're an S. And then she went and checked her test results, and she was an S.
Whoa! I know.
And,
Mr. Intuitive
right.
figured it out for me.
Exactly. I intuited that you were an S.
That's interesting because I tend to be, when I'm like profiling people I know, I tend to be very bad about figuring out which of these they are because I'm a pretty strong N.
Yeah.
I wonder if I were a stronger S that maybe I would pick up on the concrete breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't know.
Good job, Paul.
Well, some of this is
you
kind of
correctly
challenging.
intuited.
The only reason I feel like I've gotten better at being able to kind of guess where people are is because I had a friend down in Phoenix that was better at guessing what people were than I was. And as we would talk out loud about it, I'd start to pick up some of that. Okay. But so anyways, the personality pages thing says we're sensing, and it gives several examples, like we're sensing when we taste food, notice a stoplight has changed. That sounds ominously bad for an N.
Oh boy.
What does a traffic sign mean?
Like,
I wonder how it works.
Yes. In an alternate dimension, would that really mean stuff?
Yeah, and the sensor is like, it's red, now it's green, I will go.
Right. We are sensing when we memorize a speech, or when we follow steps in a plan. So this speaks to my not being an S. When I was studying for a spelling bee in grade school, I didn't want to memorize the words, so I actually recorded myself spelling words and put my headphones on at night so that I could absorb it while I slept. It did not work. And when I woke up in the morning, my headphones had fallen off, and I was like, "Dang it, it fell off."
It would have worked if not for that.
How many of those words did I get? And then I did actually win the spelling bee at the at my school level.
Nice.
I think this was I might have been in the 6th grade. I don't remember what grade I was, 5th grade maybe. But anyways, I lost at the next level because I spelled anecdote wrong because I thought it was antidote and it was anecdote.
Oh.
And I didn't ask for a spelling. So, classic rookie
Wait.
mistake. I mean, I didn't ask for a definition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Classic rookie mistake. So, I have a similar story without the trying to incept ourselves in our sleep. That I also made it to the second round, but I was thwarted by macaroni. I thought there were 2 C's.
Oh, is that?
I'm still not sure.
That's confusing.
This is fun. Let's go back to extroversion and introversion for a minute.
Okay.
So I won my 8th grade class spelling bee, and I was supposed to go on to the school one, and I didn't want to. I was like, no, I'll pass. I'll let somebody else go.
Okay, and why? That's because you felt
I just didn't want to
uncomfortable?
be in front of everybody.
You didn't want to be in the spotlight.
Yep.
Interesting.
Funny.
Very interesting.
When I was at the school level, of the spelling bee, everybody was laughing when I got up to say a word, and I was like, "These people think I'm a really funny guy." And then at some point, the teacher pulled me aside and she said, "Your fly is open," and so I always use this for one of my most embarrassing moments. But you know, being an extrovert, like it didn't kill me. I just turned around, zipped up my fly, and turned around, and kind of laughed with everybody.
Oh, okay. I was hoping you did a little
okay.
dance or something, or like,
And then I tipped my hat off.
Were you there when I was showing our roommates Mr. T's recouping?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you showed that to me.
Yeah, it's like when you get embarrassed by something,
down.
you find a way to turn it into something cool. Instead so it doesn't stay as something absolutely ludicrous and embarrassing.
Oh yeah, you should look
You
this up.
extroverts.
It's got a great kid that falls down on the sidewalk, and then he turns it into a little breakdance.
Yeah.
And then the guy walking past him gives him like thumbs up or something. Yeah. So then this thing says we're intuitive when we come up with a new way of doing things. Think about future implications for current action, perceive underlying meaning in what people say or do, and see the big picture. So, like, for example, yeah, like, I think we would tend to say, like, supposedly the most common, well, we talked a little bit earlier, I think in an earlier episode about the Kiersey temperaments. Maybe we'll have an episode where we talk just about those.
Yeah,
but
we should.
the Kiersey temperaments are four subgroupings of the Myers-Briggs stuff, so that and each preference is related to 2 of the letters. So supposedly the most common Kiersey temperament in the U.S. is SJ, which is a sensing temperament, and the N's are less common. NF and NT are less common. I think NT is the least common, and then NF. But anyways, and so I was having this conversation with my friend. He was like, "Well, what are the advantages of being an S?" And I was like, "Well, I'll give you an example. So, S's, like SJs, for example, they're better at just like doing a job they're given, following instructions that they're given, and just being happy doing that."
Yeah.
And so, like,
my mom was an SJ.
yeah,
Like,
I'm an SJ.
strongly. Okay.
okay,
Yep.
So, I worked for this law firm for a while, and we interviewed this guy, and my boss asked him a bunch of questions, and then asked if I had any questions, and the only question I asked the guy was, "Do you know your personality type?" And he didn't, but he went home and took a test, and then he gave us his results later. And my boss asked me, "What does this mean?" He was an SJ, so I don't remember what the other letters were. And I sent my boss like a summary of this, and I said it basically probably means he'll be a great employee, and as long as you give him enough direction and instructions, he'll probably just do what you tell him. And then I told him, and if you need this to be validated in any way, look what it says about me. And mine said, like, fiercely independent, like, like don't like structure. And I had worked for this firm for a while, but at some point I had, like, moved out of state, even though he didn't want me to. I was like, well, I'm going. Do you want to keep me on or not? You know? And I moved, and I don't know. I just, like, did a lot of things that he didn't actually ask me to do, but that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, and that's kind of some of the differences that, like, ends are great when it's, in the workplace anyways, ends are great when it's, like, you need somebody who can, like, take initiative without much direction and just kind of imagine something up and create it of themselves, you know?
Yeah.
But
they're not as good as a rank and file soldier who just is manning a post.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel completely the same.
Entrepreneurs tend to be ends because they'll think about future possibilities, like, you know, like the Elon Musks of the world. Like, why don't we go start a colony on Mars?
Yeah. No,
like, Yeah.
I would guess that this is not just a function of being an N. It's also, it's more likely to be true if they're an extrovert.
Sure.
More likely to be true, I think, if they're a P. Well, actually, that one may or may not.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know, but like, I was great with some things. Like, for example,
Because again, intuition. This is all about how they get information, and then what that information leads them to do. I mean that in its purest form, that's what N versus S is. It's about how we tend to gather information. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So, like, for example, in that same job, my boss had asked me at one point, we need a new docketing software. Can you just go research it and find out what we need and then implement it? Mm-hmm. And that was great. I didn't need any more direction than that, and I just did it. But I could gather my own information. I don't know. Okay, that's interesting. So I don't know. I'm not sure, if that necessarily relates directly
Well,
to...
I mean, the Kiersey temperaments, it's 2 letters, right? So it's not
two
just
letters.
the N.
That's true.
It's also,
Yeah, that's true.
what, F? Is that what you're saying?
I'm in an F, yeah.
And it's...
NFs and NTs, we tend to be more likely to enjoy being entrepreneurs. And I had like an early career crisis when I started practicing law. Yeah. And I was getting really bored. Everybody giving me all these directions and doing things. And now that I've broken off and started my own firm, it's a lot more satisfying.
Yeah, and I'm similar. Yeah. I stopped working for the man full time for several years ago.
Now, I never worked...
People always tell me I should start my own business, and I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Man.
And Shayla, financially, you're doing a lot. You have a lot more to show for that than I think Paul and I do. But we have our independence, darn it.
That's right.
Yeah, we do. So, anyways, I had some question earlier. Now I forgot what it was.
Oh man.
I know, but I did want to ask. Okay, so Shayla, you're an S.
Yeah.
Bryce, you're an N.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys think that you've tended to date people or pursue people that have the same letter or the opposite letter on that letter?
Do you know? That's a great question. I think I've dated more people who are opposite, and I think that has often been a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not wholly, because I have some N in me, as we all do have pieces of them.
Right. Sure.
But they're a lot bigger dreamers, and I'm a lot more concrete. Like, now this is literal.
Mm-hmm. I will say that on most of these websites, they will say this is a good letter to be the same on in romantic relationships, because the way you gather information, or the way you perceive the data that you gather or whatever, it also affects the way you communicate. And so S's tend to understand one another a little bit more naturally.
Yeah, they're operating off of similar premises, because they tend to notice the same kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Where N's will be when N's are talking with us, sometimes they'll be like, "All right, this is getting a little boring," or S's will be like, "Why's your head always up in the clouds?" Like, I don't know. I can remember having this conversation, talking with some like book club about Life of Pi, and at the end they were like, "So, how do you think it ended? Do you think it was cannibalism, or was the tiger really a tiger?" Uh-huh. And one guy that was sitting there, I think this guy was probably an S. He was like, "It doesn't matter. It's fake." And I was like, "Okay, party pooper." That's what I thought. And I was just like, dude. We all know it's fake, but
that's awesome.
Go ahead.
I think I'm always kind of drawn to N's. Like, I love that they can be imaginative and think outside of the box, but they don't become like somebody that I feel connected at the soul with. Like, when people get the concrete ideas and the here and now and the literal and the factual, those people I seem to just like, we just jive better.
Like Keith Urban.
Yeah, and obviously there are exceptions to that, but but yeah, I love the dreaminess for a minute, and then I'm like, you're kind of stuck offing around the world.
Yeah, you probably are an S, or it fits. That fits my theory. Yeah.
Oh, but yeah. Like when we were talking earlier about how I guessed that Shayla was an S. Did I mention this? That I think that's kind of an N thing to do, is to try to guess people's more often.
Probably.
Okay, probably said that.
Yeah, because that's more abstract, more theorizing, reading between the lines.
Right.
Yeah, that's totally territory of N's.
I don't know. I think S's do that too, but we do more like, well, I think you're an N because of this fact and this fact
that's
and
right.
this fact.
That's
right?
right. Yeah. Yes.
Sure.
Observable, concrete facts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm going to retract my statement about INFJs because I do know INFJs that love personality stuff.
Sure.
So my friend that was an INFJ didn't want to be put in a box, but I don't think that's an INFJ trait.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah.
But anyways, I've mostly dated N's too, and generally I feel like that's worked out better for me.
Yeah.
I have dated a couple S's, and I've been surprised recently how I've had some friends that are S's that I feel like I connect with well. But when I spend a lot of time with them, I notice that my N preference and their S preference tend to I start to notice it more.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I was gonna say one of the ways that you can sometimes guess what people are on this one is how they tend to talk and the words they tend to use. And S's tend to use more concrete language. Yeah. And N's tend to use more abstract language. Or, for example, N's will often say, they will often speak by analogy, you know? So, yeah. You notice that, Bryce?
No.
No.
That would make sense to me though.
Yeah, I got a quote here from an SNL skit. Oh, this is great SNL skit. It's George Will Sports Machine. It was Dana Carvey, and the questions were all like these super brainy questions. And he asked one question. He said, and this is like kind of like a Jeopardy game show kind of thing. He said, in 1954, Willie Mays, in an emphatic stroke of Byzantine whimsy, made his over-the-shoulder catch off of Vic Wertz. What was it not unlike? And
what was it not unlike?
What was it not unlike? Which that itself is confusing. He said, "Take it, anyone?" And all the contestants were like, you know, real big sports enthusiasts, and they were like, "What the heck?" And the one guy was like, Mike Schmidt. Mike Schmidt was like, the catch in Cincinnati that, and then the buzzer sounded and said, "Sorry, it was not unlike watching Atlantis rise again from the sea, the bones of its kings new covered with flesh."
Whatever.
Yeah, and everybody looks at him like, "You're crazy." At the end of the skit, somebody gets mad at him and they're like, "Have you ever even thrown a baseball?" And they throw a baseball at him, he runs away like a pansy. But so that's like an extreme example of like an N making an analogy. But yeah, anyways.
But again, yeah, no, I like it. But again, in its purest form, the N is about what kind of information they tend to gather. And yes, from there, you know, maybe they'll concoct some, you know, they tend to think by analogy, right? Because they tend to notice by analogy.
Sure. Yeah, and it's not like N's aren't gathering the same facts that S's are. Like, you know, like when I want to learn about something, I often will go looking up something up on a Wikipedia page or something, or talking with people and asking them about it.
Well, that's not factual. Wikipedia.
It's actually not bad. I will.
Well,
in defense of Wikipedia, I'll say it's probably more factual than your out-of-date Encyclopedia Britannica that has all of last decade's research in it.
And almost any opinion posted on Facebook.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, those are factual for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in fact, I mean, I practice patent law, right? So a lot of times I do need to look up things about to get some background information about some kind of technology as I'm writing a patent about it. And I've found, for technology in general, I found Wikipedia to be remarkably accurate. So, yeah. At any rate, I mean, I think that anything like that's crowdsourced, you could get some bad actors on there. Of course. But as long as there's more good actors than bad actors, they take those people off. Yeah. So, anyways, okay. So, yeah.
So can I add something? Because these notes are great.
Sure.
If anyone is still, or if anyone out there still wants some additional clarity on, you know, kind of the difference. So I think this is helpful. It says that, you know, censors value realism and common sense. They especially like ideas with practical applications. Some common characteristics is that they're concrete, realistic. They live in the present. They're aware of their surroundings. They notice details. They're practical. They go by their senses. They're factual.
Sure.
It says intuitive people live in the future, which
censors focus on the present, and intuitors live in the future.
Yeah.
They will project things into the future.
Yeah.
Sure, okay.
Okay.
I mean,
anyway, and they're immersed in a world of possibilities. They process information through patterns and impressions. They value inspiration and imagination. They gather knowledge by reading between the lines. Their abstract nature attracts them toward deep ideas, concepts, and metaphors, kind of like you were saying. They can see the big picture. Some of their characteristics, they're future focused. They see possibilities. They're inventive, imaginative, deep, abstract, idealistic, and theoretical.
Yeah. Sure. I was talking with somebody this week about what books we were reading. And I told him I had just finished Moby Dick. Well, it was an audiobook. I've been going through the classics because they're free. And
That's a good point.
So I'm like, I don't want an Audible. I'm not ready to bump up to an Audible thing yet. But anyways, and he was like, yeah, I don't know if I would. He's an S. And he was like, yeah, I don't know if I would read something like that because I would think, how is this going to be useful for me, kind of thing. So he liked reading. And this is another way you can kind of generally tell. S's tend to read more like books about real world stuff. Yeah. And N's tend to read more stuff that requires imagination and is not real world stuff.
Yeah, that's not me at all. I don't read real world stuff and I'm an S. I only read imaginative stuff.
Yeah, is that true?
Maybe it likes to take me. Maybe I like to get out of my S. I don't know.
I don't know. And you may have more N in you.
You need to take the more advanced version.
Apparently.
Yeah. I will say you gotta like you can't count Harry Potter in this because almost everybody universally seems to like the Harry Potter series. Yeah. But for example, though, I will say this, Shayla. Do you like Tolkien stuff, like Lord of the Rings?
No.
Fantasy stuff? What is it about that you don't like?
It's too fluffy. So yeah, maybe that's...
Because I really get into that kind of stuff. Have you ever?
And I do like self-help books, so maybe I'm just contradicting myself now.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're a complicated person.
Well, S's will sometimes like fiction, but they'll tend to like fiction that's more like real-world fiction, so like historical fiction.
I like fiction that could be real, but it's not. But I could see how it could be real. That's the kind of fiction I like.
Okay. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, the friend I was talking with I can't remember what he was reading. He was reading something like the Brothers Karamazov. I don't know why he thought that applied to his life more, but I don't know. It might have. I know there's a lot of philosophical things it talks about. In there. But for me, I feel like I'll read through things. I felt like it was arduous trying to get through the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I made it through it, but at the end of it, I felt like that was very useful, and I still feel like it's useful. But at the time, I was like, this is boring though, but useful. But when I read through,
I just eat it up. I underline everything. I make notes. I love it.
Well, yeah, I'm the same way when I'm reading a fantasy book, something that's totally fake that I wrap my imagination around. Man, I eat those up like junk food. So it's great.
So that's interesting because Stephen Covey's he has another book called The Spiritual Roots of Human Relations, which is much more conceptual, I think, than 7 Habits. The way it's written and just it is anyway.
I think
which I think speaks to the audience he was trying to reach with each book.
Okay. Interesting. Maybe I read the wrong one.
Yeah. Hey, I've got that one if you want to read it.
I'm gonna pull it out. I do think this is one of the reasons why I enjoyed law school quite a bit more than engineering school. I like science and I enjoy it, but when you get down to the nitty gritty of now I need to solve this problem and what's the surface energy of this drop of water or whatever, and then I get a little bit bored. But when you're in law school, you're talking a lot about abstract theory. You know? I feel like that's one of the reasons I liked it. But anyways, so basically we've determined that N's are better at predicting the future. So
I thought it was interesting as I was reading through this.
You're joking. So... We're not necessarily better at it. We're just...
You just like to do it more.
We direct our fact finding towards...
We try to predict the future more.
Yeah.
By the way, on a somewhat quasi-related line, I heard this really interesting... show a few weeks ago about the half-life of knowledge in certain technology areas. And that involves a lot of prediction and stuff. But for example, stuff that's on the cutting edge of technology has a short half-life, because a lot of it ends up being wrong. But anyways, so hey, all those ends, getting stuff wrong. But for
those not familiar, half-life is the amount of time it takes for half of the amount of something to dissipate. Sorry, this is another pedantic interruption. Usually we use that term when we're talking about molecules, right?
Yeah, like the half-life. We use it in conjunction with a radioactive substance.
Yeah.
So we'll say like the half-life of this is so like there's a half-life of carbon-14 or whatever, and this is how we do carbon dating because
we know how the rate at which it degrades.
Right, we know that every X number of years, half of the carbon atoms will no longer be there. They won't be carbon, or they'll be degraded to something else. I don't know exactly how it works. But anyways, okay. All right. Well,
which again, that's a very end thing for us to notice.
Yeah.
Because you sure can't observe that with your senses. You can't say, "Oh, well, now I see there's only 10 billion, carbon-14 atoms."
Yeah.
I observe with my senses.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess you can with a microscope. I don't know.
Yeah,
anyway.
Exactly. I've wondered too if ends tend to be a little bit more playful in some ways. I don't really know, but like for example, I feel like when I'm in a conversation and people will be telling a story. And I'll oftentimes interject with something fake. And then you did this? I just make something up. I mean, I also think that's just a humor thing, but I feel like sometimes my S friends just say, no, and then they keep going. And my N friends will be like, yeah, totally. I totally did that.
So I theorize that it's a different kind of humor. Like S's might prefer more practical jokes, like one of our roommates who likes touching my ear while I'm focused on a video game I'm playing on my laptop. He finds that hilarious,
Okay.
I do want to say, as I was reading through these, I thought, so I work in marketing. Am I allowed to say that? Mm-hmm. But I was thinking about how marketing is a very end job, inspiration and imaginative, deep ideas, concepts, metaphors, and often I get stuck there. I'm like, what? I know they want me to come up with some new concept, but I don't have anything to go off of. But the part of marketing that I'm really good at is the concrete parts and
metrics.
The get this out. Like, we'll get this mailer out and we'll get this done. And if you do these processes, you'll get more sales. That's the part that I'm great at. And the imaginative stuff, sometimes I'll have like a lightning bolt stroke of inspiration and I can do it. Yeah. But more often than not, I have to, those are harder for me to get to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Right, and I feel like I really enjoy the branding side of it.
That's right.
But like when I was over activities in this congregation that I was in, I feel like that I would come up with some activity, and then the first thing I would do was like, okay, let's give it a cool name, and I'd come up with something. I don't know. Anyways, okay, well we probably better wrap this one up. Any final thoughts about N versus S?
Well, I think we all know that the best letter is N.
It's S. Oh. If you look at the facts, it will tell you that's true.
Well, but if you can see the big picture, you know what's the best one.
If you read between the lines of the facts, you'll know. You'll know.
I feel like I'm outweighed here by nature
they're
of
all
being...
important.
True, you
they're
are.
all important. Because, again, like, using my mom as an example, she was, like, probably, like, 10,000% S. Like...
10,000%?
It's probably, yeah.
Is she a tiger mom?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. The most like practical, hands-on woman I've ever known, and she accomplished so much. Again, I'm sorry, and that's not to downplay. I mean, no one is purely one or the other, but I really admire her practical abilities. She raised 6 kids. Like, you got to be very practical to do that.
Sure, and like I told my friend, to kind of come full circle there, like the advantages of S's, I thought to myself, well, when I get to the point where I'm hiring employees, I would probably mostly hire S's because mostly what I would need are people that are able to take the instructions that I give and just follow them.
And do the stuff that you're not as good at anyway.
Yeah, that I'm not as good at.
Yeah.
And so I would probably hire some N's like down the road, when but not as many N's as S's. Thankfully, society has more S's than N's. So.
Yeah.
In my annual reviews, I always have overwhelming. You get stuff done. Like anything I give you gets done, and it gets done fast.
Right.
It's an S thing. Yeah.
And I had to buy this book called Getting Things Done.
And, so you can appreciate the concepts behind it.
And ironically, people were asking me for months, like, when I'm talking to people about what I was reading, I'd be like, I'm stuck in this book called Getting Things Done. Because I was stuck in it. For many months. I still haven't finished it, but I did actually incorporate some of the things that he says into my life, and I have found them very helpful.
Nice.
So, all right. Well, I guess that's about it. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
Next time we'll be talking about thinking versus feeling.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, Please consider subscribing on iTunes or your favorite podcasting app and give us a rating. Thank you.